Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the moment's finally here. Ryan Poles had his first NFL draft, and we've got all the results, and we'll be talking about all the players that they've brought in, and it's going to be exciting. Also be talking some baseball and maybe get into some other stuff. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? Well, not only do you get to see the Stars of Tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices, but you could actually still watch hockey because they're in the Calder Cup playoffs. But don't let that take that as a dig at the Blackhawks because their season did that enough for them. But make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, NFL draft. I don't think you were as excited about it as I am.
Well, you're really excited about those things. And, you know, I will concede that you were probably more excited than I was. But, you know, now that the NFL draft has happened, I feel like there's at least a lot of relief in my mind, in the mind of other Bears fans, because we got through it. We saw what Ryan Poles did. And I feel like we're in a position where we really have a good idea of what Ryan Poles is trying to do, and that he's kind of honest to his word. He's got a vision, he's got a plan, and he's executed a plan for a team in the position that he's dealt with. You know, it's not like he was trying to go ballsy and trade up and try to hit a home run or two, because a home run or two wasn't going to win you a Super Bowl. You were not one or two big draft picks away from being a Super Bowl contender. You are in a rebuilding phase. You are trying to create a new future for the long term. And Ryan Poles strategized exactly the way you should in this situation. Whether or not a lot of these picks work out is remain to be seen. They have to execute on the field. But I think the execution by Ryan Poles fits where the Bears are in this situation. You are now in a spot where you're just trying to fill out a roster. You just flat out need bodies. And what better way to fill out a roster than filling it with as many draft picks as possible? Less of the cheap veterans that are not going to be around much longer, or the practice squad type guys. Fill it with prospects. And that's what Ryan Poles did by trading back over and over again. And, you know, these were 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, but you find value in those rounds. It's the NFL. It's not like the NBA. This is the NFL where you can find value in the later rounds. And the more value you potentially find, the better that is for molding your future. So it makes me feel better about what Ryan Poles is doing, because he understands the situation. He's not just winging it. He's not just taking random prayers. We never really saw a vision with Ryan Pace. We're seeing a vision with Ryan Poles.
You know, the way I'm looking at this is, and we had no idea. I mean, Ryan Poles has been very open about things, but there's still, until you see what he's doing in action, it's a little bit of a mystery. And we didn't know what he was going to do in this draft. We were pretty sure he was not going to trade up, because that would have been contrary to everything that he was telling us. Really, he was going to either stand pat or trade back. And as much as I would have liked to have a few more picks in that 2nd, 3rd, maybe even the beginning of 4th round, like I would like to have a bunch of picks in that range. Honestly, it was not worth trading back to make that happen, because the Bears saw some real value fall to them at picks 39 and 48. And even a little later than that, there was a lot of good picks there. So I'm happy they didn't trade back. But so we kept our pick 39, pick 48, and pick 71. And then going into day 3, we were slated to have 3 picks. And then Poles did some wheeling and dealing, did some trade backs, and wound up overall going from 6 total picks in the draft to 11. And some of this I'm seeing is probably, all right, well, we desperately need offensive linemen. I mean, nobody's denying that. But we also desperately needed cornerbacks and safety and linebackers and wide receivers. We desperately needed a lot of positions, and the odds of you hitting on all of those picks with a second, 2 seconds, a third, a fifth, and a sixth, like that's just not really likely.
Right.
So it looks like he took really safe picks that I expect to be big time contributors this year with the first 2 picks. Took a guy that I would say has a very, very high ceiling, but probably a lower floor with the 3rd pick. And then he just took, rather than put all his eggs in one basket, I mean, he drafted what? 1, 2, 3, 4 offensive linemen, because odds are if you throw, 4 things at the wall, one of them sticking, rather than if you throw one thing at the wall. So he, took 4 offensive linemen, banking on 1, maybe even 2 of them being serviceable for your team. I do like that approach. That seems like it's a good fit. If your hit rate is 50% and you go from 6 to 11 picks, you're looking at 5 to 6, quality players versus 3. So I do like that approach. The other thing I noticed, and I don't know if you picked up on this, are you familiar with the RAS score?
Somewhat.
So for those of you that aren't, it's RAS. It's a relative athletic score. I think that's the acronym. But essentially, it ranks. It takes all of these, metrics of your speed, and you're not just speed, but because if you're 5'7", you're probably faster than a guy that's 6'9". So they base it on your position, your size, your height, weight, and your position, your speed, your all these agility drills, and your explosiveness. High jump, long jump, short shuttle, 40-yard dash, etc. They do take all of these metrics into account and rank you versus historical players at that same size and position. And the score goes from 1 to 10. A 10 would be Calvin Johnson got a 10. So for a wide receiver, that big wide receiver, he was as athletic as anybody ever in that position. Makes sense. So a lot of these players that the Bears drafted were exceptionally high on that RAS score. I mean, guys that are 9.3, 9.5. And you're like, okay, he's banking on the high upside being that they're very athletic, that you can mold them to what you want. Because if you take an athletic person, you can mold them to be something, because athletic people are just naturally good at sports, period, regardless of what the sport is. It's why you see really good baseball players also played basketball or football, because they're just naturally good athletes because they're athletic. And that's what I think he's banking on. And you can sort of see that is Doug Kramer, the center they drafted from U of I. his RAS score was like 8.58, I believe.
That's pretty good.
You compare that to Sam Mustipher, who was our starting center most of last year, who scored a 0.85.
Oh my.
So that's what you're looking at, is you're looking at a much more athletic center coming in. And I appreciate that. You can mold these guys, other than the punter. The punter was not that high on it. And the running back that they drafted, his athleticism score was not that high. It wasn't terrible. It was like 5-ish, but that's for his size and position, there's some really athletic people. So you're not really expecting that.
And it's not a position that was in dire need either. I mean, you still have David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. And it was kind of interesting going to this draft, wondering if Dave Montgomery was going to be expendable or not. Now, there probably isn't much of a market for him. I mean, how often these days are you trading for a running back? The market really probably wasn't there, but I thought it would be interesting to see if they went along the lines of maybe, moving on from Montgomery, a year before his rookie deal's up, and then drafting a Ryan Poles type running back. But they did draft the running back. And a few weeks ago, I was kind of like, you sure they want to do that? But once they accumulated all those draft picks, I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a running back in there somewhere, especially for a GM that's really big about beating you in the trenches.
Yeah, and honestly, I was not expecting them to trade David Montgomery. I don't think you get the value trading him that you would get from keeping him for this last year of his rookie deal.
Probably not.
Even if you decide not to re-sign him, I think you get you're probably going to get a 5th rounder for him, maybe a 4th rounder.
Yeah. Running backs are expendable. You're not going to pay big for them for the most part.
So he's worth more than a 4th or a 5th rounder.
Right. And I'm not saying I was banking on it. I was just curious to see if something like that was going to happen. I just remember going back to when we were going to the 2019 season, and, Nagy wanted a more Nagy type running back as opposed to Jordan Howard. They wanted somebody who could catch, and Dave Montgomery was that type of guy, and Jordan Howard was the type of ground and pound guy. But, I still think Dave Montgomery is a useful back. I don't think he's anything spectacular, but I think he is a bit of an underrated value as a running back. We saw him last year have some really nice games, and obviously have Khalil Herbert. But, regardless, you still, Tariq Cohen is now a thing of the past. It's not like he played the past 2 years, but he was still technically, part of your team. That's not the case. So, regardless.
Speaking of Tariq Cohen, do we see him ever playing in the NFL ever again?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It's sad to say, I've always liked him, but when you don't play for 2 years and you're clearly not ready to play, I don't know. Maybe he plays in that new, some of those new football, like the XFL could be one, or what's that other one? Is like the American football, or
yeah, I feel bad. I mean, but clearly something was not right, and I'm doubting it was physical. I bet there was a lot of mental, because I've never torn my ACL, but from what I hear from other people, is there's like some discomfort and not like excruciating pain, but there's a pain and discomfort that go along with rehabbing on it. And if you can't push through that, you're not going to be able to hit that elite status again. And it just seems like Tariq Cohen was not willing to, or not able to do that. I feel bad. I would have loved to have seen him in this new offense, what he could do, but he's gone, and I don't picture anybody else picking him up, because at this point he's got to be like 30 years, close to 30 years old.
Yeah, he was drafted by Ryan Pace. I think it was the same draft Adam Shaheen was taken, but I think it was taken in 2017.
Oh, I take that back. He's going to turn 27 this year.
Yeah, so he's not that old. But
no, so nobody's brought him in. No, there's not even talks. I've gone on his Twitter account and there's not even mention of anything. He's taken some shots at people that have taken shots at him, and he's basically said, "I'm not with the Bears anymore. Leave me alone." I don't even know if there's a push to be in the NFL.
The thing is like, even when he was still on the Bears roster, when he was injured, you barely heard anything.
Nope, just silence.
Yeah, I mean, I think he might find a professional football gig somewhere else, but I don't think it's going to be the NFL.
I mean, that this far past that same injury, Adrian Peterson had already rushed for like 3,500 yards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we are on that. But honestly, this draft pick, I see him more as, can he push Darrington Evans for that third running back spot rather than pushing David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert?
Well, I think another thing to keep in mind too, when we look at the running back core itself, is Khalil Herbert is going to be around for a few more years. And I never see him being a number one, but I think he's going to be your solid number two for the next few years. So, maybe you think about building around that, because I don't think they're going to extend Dave Montgomery. Again, it's no disrespect to him, but in this day and age, you don't pay big money to running backs. You can easily draft a replacement.
No, yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with you. I was actually about to say that I fully expect that it becomes very routine for Ryan Poles to draft a running back, because
absolutely.
I think you're going to see a constant just rotation, because, and it probably will rotate between, fifth, sixth round type guy to, second, third round pick type guy. And just sort of cycle through them, because honestly, I mean, I grew up in the era where running back was more important than quarterback.
Sure. Old man, you.
I know. And, but it's, I've watched this shift, and I've watched this shift to where running backs just aren't important. And a running game is very important, but the running back himself is become marginalized. And so what's the point of paying a guy like that a lot of money? And I like David Montgomery. I think he's actually a really underrated back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to see, with a meaner, nastier offensive line and an offensive scheme that we're being told is going to focus more on the run, I think you're going to see David Montgomery have a hell of a year, and he's going to earn himself a paycheck. I just don't think it's going to be from the Bears unless he's able to read and go, do I stay in this system where I've succeeded and for $4 million a year, or go somewhere else for like 6 or 7, and I don't know what'll happen to me. I don't know. I mean, I think it's silly to not offer him a contract. I don't even know what his market will be.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the other thing too, is, the Bears, if the time comes where they need to sign Dave Montgomery, when that moment comes, it's like, well, if you don't sign him, then who is going to be willing to sign a quarterback and a running back? And again, this is no disrespect to Dave Montgomery. It's just, look, if you have a system, an offensive system, and you know how to run that system, you can find running backs to just get in that, just plug them right in, And that's the thing with, I think, Ryan Poles is, he's going to have a system. He's building his mean athletic offensive line. If you just draft the right guy and plug him in every few years, then there you go. There's your solution right there. And it sucks to say, like, because it sounds like we're undervaluing Dave Montgomery, and he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. I've always really liked his ability to go out there and bounce off guys. There's certainly certain types of running backs out there that are different. It's not like every running back's the same. Some are more explosive with speed. Some are more physical, that they're able to match up better physically. Some are just power guys up the middle. Some are better receiving running backs. There's different kinds, but they're everywhere. In a given draft or free agency, they're everywhere. You can find the type of running back you're looking for very easily. And yeah, sure, there are the Derrick Henrys, the Aaron Jones. Those guys still do exist. It's just not
even Aaron Jones. Like, honestly, the only running back I'm probably paying money to is Derrick Henry.
I agree.
Because he's just a game changer. Like,
yes,
he's legit a game changer. Like, you can have a terrible quarterback and well,
look what they've done with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill is at best mediocre quarterback. You haven't built your offense is basically you run Derrick Henry and throw some dump passes off, and every once in a while throw a deeper pass to AJ Brown, who was traded away. But it's mostly is Derrick Henry. And like, you get down to the goal line and you're going to score a touchdown because who's stopping him? You could tell them what the play is. You could tell the defense, this is what we're running, and he's just going to bowl you over.
Right.
He's a difference maker, and you pay him because you pay a guy that can change the game. David Montgomery, again, no disrespect, very good running back. And for the right price, I would definitely keep him. I like how he breaks the tackles. I like the attitude he has. I like him. I like the results we've gotten.
I do too.
But it's the difference between him and Derrick Henry is off the charts.
Massive.
And it is not just him. It's
pretty much everybody.
Yeah. Even what's his name from Indianapolis that rushed for all those yards. I felt like with that offensive line, a lot of running backs could have done that. Derrick Henry to me is just light years ahead of everybody else. And so if I'm not getting Derrick Henry, I'm not going to pay big money for a running back. And I think that's just the smart way to go about it is, we will have a metric poop ton of salary cap next year. But if you just go spending it drunkenly, then you're not going to have it. Is you want to be able to have this to find those pieces that you can't get in the draft, or to reward the players that you drafted that have played well.
Right.
So it's just a smart way to go about it. So, Treston Ebner that they drafted I don't see him in any way, shape, or form pushing Montgomery or even Herbert.
No,
he's going to be competing with Darrynton Evans, who they signed as a free agent for that third running back spot.
And you need that depth. You absolutely need that depth.
Especially, when you go into camp, is you just need bodies in there to run drills and, so it just, you bring in these guys and you have a real competition. Let them compete. Use the preseason and the joint practices and the training camp to compete. See who picks up the offense fastest. See who's the competitor. See who goes out there and makes the plays. Is because honestly, there's very few guys that I'm married to on this roster. If Treston Ebner comes in and looks amazing, and I don't care, give him all the reps. I'm not telling you got to give because I like David Montgomery that he needs to, and he's the veteran that he needs to win out. No, best one gets the most carries. Same thing with wide receiver. If Byron Pringle and Velus Jones come out there and ball, and Darnell Mooney, gets the number of receptions cut in half that he did last year, Okay, I don't care. I'm more interested in winning football games and the best player playing.
This is a very, very big training camp for the Bears this year because there's going to be so much opportunity and so much raw talent out there. I mean, look, you're going to see some guys, whether they came in via drafts, UFA, whatever, you're going to see a situation where guys are going to stick out more than others. And maybe sometimes it's not going to be who you expect. You could see guys that you were a little lower on really bring it, and maybe some guys you were higher on that you already have a pedigree on, whether it's a veteran or someone that's been at least around a year, where you think, maybe they're not as locked into that position as we think. Because when you think about it, there's only a tiny handful of guys left that are going to be locked in their position. Justin Fields, a quarterback. You'll have Roquan, and for the time being, you've got Robert Quinn. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty wide open, wouldn't you think?
I'm going to ask you this. From the time that you woke up and had breakfast on Friday morning to right now, how many new players did the Bears bring in?
Does this include undrafted free agents?
Yes.
20?
45.
Holy hell.
They brought in 11 draft picks, 21 undrafted free agents that they signed, and another 13 players that they agreed to allow to come into training camp and compete for a roster spot.
I love it. I love it. Give these guys a chance. Look, you and I both know that the chances are pretty high that they're not going to be good next year in terms of winning and contending for a playoff spot. They're not going to be very good, but you have so much opportunity to see what you have going forward. And the nice thing too is it's a whole new regime. It's a regime that is very different than the last one in a number of ways. It's already showing that. So don't have expectations. Just let it all ride out. Obviously, you want to have expectations for Justin Fields, the most important player on the team. You want to have expectations for a guy like Darnell Mooney. You want to have expectations for some of the veterans you brought in. But for so much of this team, there's so much unknown, and it's exciting when you're rebuilding because there's a lot of potential. It's not like we're going into the season saying we expect to be a Super Bowl contender. We're going to be banking on a lot of these guys. You're just seeing what you have. And like I said before, so many draft picks, undrafted free agents, young guys that you can mold within a new regime. And it's easier to establish a culture long-term when you have young guys in there that could potentially be part of that. It's not like you're trying to establish a culture and a regime where you don't have your franchise quarterback and you don't have potential anchor pieces for that. Because then what's the point? You're just going to have to bring in more guys as we go along and kind of mold them into this. Now, at least you might not have the full squad that you want to be a contender with, but at least you have some of the essential building blocks and maybe some more essential building blocks that you don't know of yet that can prove themselves going forward. So this training camp is going to be a must follow for Bears fans.
Yeah. And so I want to take a few minutes to kind of go through the players that they drafted. And first and foremost, number 39, they picked Kyler Gordon, cornerback out of Washington. He was a guy, I actually watched film of him, and I was not expecting him to be available when the Bears picked. I expected him to go in like the late 20s into the mid 30s. I was not expecting him. I thought at the latest he would be like a pick 35-ish. I was not expecting him to be around. he had it was an awesome cornerback tandem because he went 39 overall to the Bears, and opposite him was Trent McDuffie, who was a first round pick. And Kyler Gordon actually led the team in pass deflections and interceptions. And he was just a really good cover corner. He's really dynamic athleticism. He, like, on that RAS scored really high, like a 9.3 something. Very athletic, has good size and strength for the position, really fluid body movement. He was able to play zone or press coverage. He pattern matched receivers and undercut a lot of receivers on the break. And really explosive. He was consistent with his playmaking, took good angles. He was a good blitzer. I just really liked him. Yeah, there was him in coverage is he's just a dog out there. I mean, he's out there fighting with receivers, as physical as they go. He's going to. You're not going to see him scared. He's got to work on turning his head around. Definitely, that was a little bit problematic. I still think there's some technical coverage things where he's going to have to get better on. He relied a lot on if he technically didn't have positioned himself right in coverage. He was fast enough and big enough to be able to recover and break up plays. But in the NFL, you're going to see him. You're going to see him give up some big plays until he learns better. Instincts, okay. He can get a little cute out there at times. He's not the best tackler, and he's not the most aggressive tackler. Like on run plays, you'll see him go down there. He'll make the tackle if he needs to, but he's not sticking his head in there if he doesn't have to. But I'm really shocked that he didn't go in the first, and I'm fully expecting him day one to be the starting cornerback opposite Jaylon Johnson.
Well, cornerback, you could argue, is one of the biggest needs for the Bears. I mean, we talk all about offensive line and wide receiver, and yeah, those are absolutely essential. But you look at cornerback, and NFL Next Gen Stats tweeted something, and they was also quoted in an article too. It was saying how the cornerback was the nearest defender on 27 of the Bears' 31 passing touchdowns in 2021. That's the most in the NFL. Also worth noting that they were tied for second most in Bears franchise history on 31 passing touchdowns allowed. So the cornerback position was really something of need because Jaylon Johnson can't do it all. And, when you're an offense facing the Bears last year, you throw away from Jaylon Johnson. So now that you potentially have two functioning cornerbacks, that's going to help things out a lot. And hopefully he could learn some of those things that you just mentioned before. But I think that with his skill set, what he brings, you're automatically going to be better with him on the field than you were last year. I know that's not saying much, but it's an improvement, and it was a much needed one too, to address that position.
Yeah, Kyler Gordon was probably consensus top 5 cornerback in this draft. So I think it's such a big need. He was a first. I guarantee the Bears had him as a first round grade. And when he's there at 39, I know a lot of people were really upset, but I would say that cornerback was a bigger need than wide receiver. I mean, wide receiver, you have Darnell Mooney. He's a good receiver. You brought in Byron Pringle, who you're expecting to be a solid receiver, not great, but you're expecting him to come in and be an improvement over what you had last year. And, we could say, oh, we lost Allen Robinson, but Allen Robinson of this past season was actually a minus player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Allen Robinson of the 2 years prior, very good player. That is a tough person to replace. The Allen Robinson from last season was actually pretty easy to replace because he was terrible. So you look at the roster you had, and you didn't have a lot. So, is Equanimeous St. Brown great? No. But is he a step up above what you had last year at that equivalent, number 3 receiver? Probably. Byron Pringle's a step up. So you expect the tight ends to be better in the receiving department because they'll be utilized better. So I understand you want a real true number 1 wide receiver. We all do. But I think based on where you are, and how much need you have on this roster, I think number 1 receiver is a little bit of a luxury. You're not a number 1 receiver away. Now, if there's a Jamar Chase there, different story. But
there wasn't the case.
Yeah, you at 39, you were going to get the number 7 wide receiver in this draft because 6 went in the first round.
Now, I'm going to admit something. When I watch the draft, the first few rounds, my meatball brain tends to take over. And I was very cool with the first draft pick. I'm like, all right, they address cornerback. I understand. I will admit, though, that the number 48 overall pick, their second rounder, I did get a little heated with the Bears thinking, okay, why didn't you take a receiver O-lineman? But when time went on and I read more into it, I kind of realized, okay, I can understand this. So
your old pal Sean on our last show tell you the Bears were going to pick at 48?
Okay. All
Jaquan
right.
Brisker. He's the one I called.
That's right. You did.
I like him. I
a
like
lot
him.
Of people do.
I like him a lot. He is arguably my favorite pick of this draft.
I feel like he's got the most upside based on what we're hearing.
I watched him play, and I think he's going to be a real stabilizing force. I feel like without Akeem Hicks, we're probably going to be a little more susceptible to the run, and we haven't had a real strong safety, a box safety, in a while. It's always been Eddie Jackson and then whoever else with him. Jaquan Brisker is a real box safety. And, he's really versatile. He is tough. You watch him in there, and he would drop out into coverage. He would come into the box. He wasn't buying on play action fakes. The more film I watched of him, the more impressed I was. He's a really good size for an NFL safety. He plays through nagging injuries without complaints. Even though he's much better as a box safety, you can put him out as in slot coverage. You can put him out there as a free safety, and he's going to be very good. Just smooth out there, good tackler, great technique, really good instincts. The footwork is good. The way he understood the defense was great. He is a hard hitter. And I just, any any negativity that you could see from him that he could be better on was things more involved in space. He's not like recognizing routes. If he's dropping into coverage, that can be improved. Taking angles when he's not the man, in the play and he's trying to chase down a play. He took some awkward angles. And sometimes when he goes in for an awkward angle tackle, he drags a guy down rather than drives through him. But they're just nitpicky things. And I just, I really like him. I really do. And I'm happy with him. And if Eddie Jackson doesn't improve, having Jaquan Brisker opposite him, then Eddie Jackson is not long for the Bears.
Well, and that's another thing too, is what Eddie Jackson are we going to get this year? Is the new regime going to make a big difference or not? I'd like to be optimistic and say it will, but we don't know. But at least we have somebody else with a high ceiling coming in at the safety position. Because again, we talked about cornerback probably being the worst outside Jalen Johnson. Safety isn't too far behind. I mean, the whole secondary really struggled last year. So Brisker definitely fills a hole, a big hole. And I've heard more people higher on this guy than any other draft pick that the Bears have. So, this is probably your highest ceiling guy you've got in this draft. And watch out for him, because if he ends up being what he's hyped up to be, then it's going to make your secondary just that much better.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I like Kyler Gordon. He's very good, but rookie cornerbacks, you're always going to have to live with some growing pains. We saw it with Jalen Johnson.
Absolutely.
It is very rare that a cornerback comes in and just looks amazing. Like, what's his name that had all the interceptions for the Cowboys this year? And people were raving about him. Diggs.
I think the term you're looking for is what's his nuts.
Yeah, what's his nuts? Diggs from Cowboys. He had like a whole bunch of interceptions. And everyone's, oh man, he's amazing. But then you have to actually watch the game film. You're like, oof. He was really bad a lot of times. I mean, really bad. Like to the point where like, do we upgrade over him? And so Kyler Gordon, you're not going to see the final form next year. You're going to see him grow, and him and Jalen Johnson are going to form a pretty formidable cornerback duo. Jaquan Brisker is going to step in, and you're going to see immediate impact. He's going to be that guy that after the first year, you're going to look and like, he's the best rookie we had on this team.
Yeah, I think that he has the highest expectations. And I feel like too, in this situation, you get him doing what he's doing, and it takes some of the pressure off the other defenders. Because I mean, when you have an elite safety, I mean, one of the big things was when your secondary sucks, you could pick on pretty much everybody. But if you got an elite safety and he's shutting guys down, and your cornerbacks look so much better, if Jalen Johnson, another year, and then you got Gordon, who, like you said, is going to have some growing pains, but plays well enough that he has his moments, then it takes off a lot of pressure from the rest of the defense. Because I feel like the past few years we say, oh, well, the front seven, if they're good, that takes off pressure off the secondary. Yeah, that's true to an extent, but you can still pick on a secondary if you get the right timing. If you're not letting the front seven get to you, then you can pick the hell out of the secondary. If you have a much better secondary, this is going to take some pressure off other guys. So this is an important pick. This is a very important pick for the future of this defense.
The round 3, number 71 pick, Bears chose Velus Jones Jr. And I think this is the one that caused Bears fans to have an aneurysm on Twitter.
This one, I think pretty much everything did.
Yeah, but I think this was the one where is the ones that were like, I'm going to hold tight. I'm going to ride her down with the Bears. People at that point went, nope, can't do it. And they lost their minds.
No, I agree.
Because, you looked at the wide receivers that were still left and they went wide receiver. It's just not the guy we thought. And when I watched tape on Velus Jones, there was a lot of things I liked. I just didn't have him ranked that high. And I see what they're trying to do here is they're like, those other guys that were available still probably had higher floors than Velus Jones. But I think this was the home run swing. I think they were like, this is a third rounder. So this is the 71st overall pick. They're like, are we expecting to get, a top flight receiver? I don't know, but we're going to pick the guy that has the highest upside rather than the guy with the highest floor, because guys that have a high floor and wide receiver at this level, then there's some sort of other flaw that they have, medical character. You don't fall if you have a super high floor and a super high potential and you're a wide receiver, you don't fall to pick 71. If you have a high floor, you probably have a low ceiling. So they went with a guy with a lower ceiling or a lower floor, but a fairly limitless ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is a barn burner. He ran a 4.31 40. He's fast. And right off the bat, he's going to return kicks for you.
We have options at special teams, man.
We do. And he is going to be option one right now. This guy, I'm saying he may, at worst, he probably winds up like a Cordero Patterson, where Cordero Patterson, they tried to shoehorn that guy into being a deep route running wide receiver, and it never really panned out so much. We saw that with the Vikings. The Vikings were trying to put him in the wrong peg, and eventually the Patriots figured out what to do with him. They're like, we are going to make this a gadget guy. We just need to get the ball in his hands, whether that's running back, slot receiver, tight end, whatever the case is. We just want to get the ball in his hands because he's big, fast, and strong. And it worked out. The Bears didn't utilize him that well, but the Falcons did. Best case scenario, Velus Jones is Deebo Samuels.
Boy, could you imagine if we have a guy like Deebo on this team?
That's kind of what it is. So Velus Jones is just a barn burner, and he's not like a frail, skinny guy. He's like 6'1" and built solid. And so, like a Tyreek Hill is a smaller guy. You could bring him down pretty easy. Velus Jones is a bigger guy, and he's just lightning fast. He doesn't run the full route tree, doesn't know an offense that well, but he's a guy that you make plays. What you're probably going to see from him this year is they're going to have X number of plays these are Velus Jones plays. And we just want to get the ball in his hands and let him run with it.
Give me the Forrest Gump type player, right?
Yeah. You'll see him returning kicks, and you're going to work him into things. It's going to take him a while, I believe. And he's older too. Like he's only like a month younger than Roquan Smith.
Yeah, I know people have been making a big deal about the age, but I'm not going to worry too much about that.
No, the only worry you have is that when his 4-year rookie contract is up, he's going to be 29. And then you go, oh, okay, well, we got him to where we want him now. And do we want to sign him again to another contract?
I mean, and that's something that you cross that bridge when you get there.
Yeah. At this point right now, it does not matter. It matters if he pans out.
Right.
But I'm seeing the same reaction. I'm old enough to remember when the Bears drafted Devin Hester, and the Bears spent a second round pick on this guy, and people went, they spent a second round pick on a kick returner, and they lost their minds. And this is a very similar reaction that we're getting to Velus Jones. And, there's not a Bears fan on this earth that will go back and go, yeah, we still shouldn't have picked Devin Hester in the second.
If you are, shame on you.
Yeah. But Velus Jones, you can line him up as a slot receiver. You can line him up as you can line him up wide. You did see he played a lot of college football, but at the end of his time at Tennessee this past season, you did watch the routes get better. His yards after the catch, amazing. He's not going down with simple arm tackles. Exceptional special teams player. Those are he can not only kick return, but he plays the gunner position as well. You talk to his teammates and loved him. Teammates loved him. He plays really hard. I saw a quote from an unnamed NFC scout that said, likable teammate, plays hard. He might be a make it guy with his special teams work alone. He's really fluid in the lower body. And if you look at the next generation stats, there is really nobody in college football that got separation to the level that he got.
And that was a huge problem with the Bears last year.
Mm-hmm. It makes your quarterback's completion percentage go way up when he's got a much bigger radius to throw the ball to.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, but like the level of separation that he got from defenders was pretty much at the very top of college football. And that is huge because that people respect speed. You see that with Tyreek Hill. That is you get the ball in their hands and you make them respect speed. You get them, you throw them, you scheme a play where they catch the ball in stride and you get explosive play that's, you're not throwing the ball 50 yards in the air. You're throwing it 14 yards in the air and he's taking it another 40 yards. That's important because the completion percentage on a 14-yard pass is a hell of a lot higher than a 54-yard pass. And the yards after the catch are what's important. But honestly, the inconsistency, the weaknesses, is, like I said, he's a little bit older. His arm span is actually not that big compared to his height. Doesn't run the full route tree. So he's really only run basic routes because of his athleticism. They didn't need him to do complicated things. So, he's just never done that. But he's played both at USC, which is, a powerhouse school. He's played at Tennessee, which is in a powerhouse conference. So he's played against high-level competition. It's not like he's a small school guy. So I'm growing to like this pick because I think when Luke Getsy and Ryan Poles look at him and they talked to, Ryan Poles said that he sat down with Justin Fields and watched film on the wide receivers and they both liked this guy. And I think when they all sit down and look at this, they look at what can we do with this speed? Because I can tell you, you can teach a guy to run the route tree. You can teach a guy the intricacies of the offense. You can work on a guy to get better hands through repetition. But you know what you can't do? You can't make a guy that's 6'1" and built solid run a 4.3 140, no matter how many reps you got there and how much you work on it. You can't teach speed. And the Bears are looking at him, and I guarantee they're going to look at him. They're like, we're going to put in a Velus Jones package. And then as he grows as a football player, they're going to incorporate him more. But for the time being, they're going to put him out there, and the defenses are going to be forced to, recognize him and realize that this guy can burn the barn doors down, and they're not going to crowd the line of scrimmage with him. You're going to make them be honest with their safeties.
Well, what I really liked about this was the fact that Justin Fields sat down and the fact that they are working together, the regime, the head coach, the general manager, and Justin Fields are finding, the guys that they all seem to like together. I think that to me says a lot. And I know it's something that you think would be easy. Be like, okay, well, doesn't that just make sense? Well, after the last regime we had, it's a breath of fresh air for the Bears. It really is.
Yeah, the last regime was just a bunch of dildos.
Wow.
I mean, honestly, I mean, for all of Mitch Trubisky's faults, and listen, I don't think he's ever going to be an exceptional starting quarterback in this league, but he's probably going to last a long time as a backup quarterback. But the fact that he came in and wanted to be better and wanted to try and wanted to work with the coaching staff on what they can do to be better, and Matt Nagy blew him off, I'll never forget that.
No, nor should you. And then, add on top of the fact that regime went out of their way to bend over backwards to cater everything they could to Andy Dalton. That they didn't give Justin Fields first team reps. They didn't prepare him properly in the offseason, or the preseason, I should say, because they were so married to Andy Dalton.
And I don't think they were married to Andy Dalton as much as they sat down and said, we're not the stupid ones. Everybody else is the stupid ones. And, they're saying we didn't work with Mitch, but what we're going to do is prove that we bring in the right quarterback and the right offensive weapons, and this system is going to kick so much ass. And guess what? It didn't kick ass with Andy Dalton. It didn't kick ass with Nick Foles. It didn't kick ass with Mitch Trubisky. It didn't kick ass with Justin Fields. It didn't kick ass with
Mike Lennon.
Yeah. And like it's them. And I mean, not saying Mitch would be great if he had a better system. I'm just saying
he got screwed a bit.
He did get screwed. He probably could have looked better. He probably could have been looked at as a serviceable, transition kind of starter.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
We'll see, because he's going into a system that's stable this year. And then he's competing against, a quarterback that should not have been a first round pick. So I fully expect Mitch Trubisky to win that starting job, and we'll see how he does with a team that is, historically very stable and has a stable coaching staff. We'll go from there. But, the whole point is that we have a different system here, and you're not letting Justin Fields run the show and pick who he wants, but you're saying, hey, listen, we're trying to do X, Y, and Z with this team. And these are the wide receivers in probably the range that we could get one. Let's look at these guys. Which do you think would work well with what your skill sets are? And here's our offense, and what in our offense, and get his input, because, he's going to have to play with this person. And the fact that Justin Fields liked this guy, that's a good sign. We like that.
I mean, and here's another thing to remember too, is that the fact that Justin Fields is getting this input on these decisions, just a reminder that the last regime, this was the same regime that literally pissed off a rookie quarterback because of how bad a game plan was against the Browns. Just remember that. Again, I don't like to keep bringing up the old regime because it's in the past. It's not relevant anymore, but I think it is important to see what this Bears regime is doing that's different from the last one. And again, I can't emphasize enough. We don't know if this regime is going to be successful or not. I'm still holding back a bit on declaring everything is going to be great. But the fact that we're getting so many breaths of fresh air with things that you wanted to see with the past regime, whether it was with Justin Fields or the way they approached the draft, is that you have a point of reference. You have something to look at and say, okay, this is different. This is why it's different. This is why it makes sense that it's different. And even things like Justin Fields having input on some of these draft decisions, I think that's important. I really do.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely going to highlight the things that are being done now that I feel are a big step forward from what the previous regime did. I'm not saying that, because they're being done the opposite way of Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, that they're going to be the right way. But I'm just saying is that it is a breath of fresh air to see the things that have been frustrating to the fans. Be addressed, and whatever the final results are going to be, that remains to be seen. We'll see at the end of next year and the end of the year after that, and see how we progress. But the fact that the things that frustrated us as fans and frustrated the players are being addressed is a good sign.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see. After Velus Jones at 71, the Bears traded back and got pick 168 in the 5th round. And they brought in Braxton Jones, offensive tackle from Southern Utah. And not on my radar. Southern Utah, I don't
even know who their mascot is.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you. But he played against lower competition, but he looked like a man that was way too good to be playing against that competition, and just really overwhelmed everybody he played against with his size and his length. And worked on the technique, but as a pass blocker, he looks really good. His size and his build are prototypical for a left tackle in this league. His kick slides, his explosion out of his stance are really good. He stays square. His technique looks good. He does nice choppy steps. He drives through the blocks. He's got to work on his hand movements a little bit. The punch. I didn't look at his 40 time, but probably not that good, because when you watched him go into the second level, it was a little bit slow there. He plays a little bit upright. He probably needs to put on some strength. They're going to have to, he stands up a little bit, but honestly, he's a real diamond in the rough. You look at him and you go, man, I think I can polish that guy into a really good player. And he is probably a guy that you're not going to put him on the practice squad because somebody's going to take him. You sort of bury him on the roster and you work on him, and next year he becomes a real damn good football player.
Yeah, I mean that's my hope.
And he's not one of those small school tackles that you got to kick inside the guard. He's a legit left tackle.
And that's something they need.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, and if Larry Borum pans out, okay, well, you got a hell of a swing tackle here. Or if Larry Borum doesn't pan out, then you know what?
You got potential here.
You got potential here. So of the 4 linemen they drafted, Braxton Jones is far and away the best of the 4.
Yep. And it makes sense too.
Let's see. Then they traded back again, and they got the number 174 pick in round 5. They drafted Dominique Robinson, who's an edge rusher from Miami of Ohio.
I really like this pick because you needed some depth at edge rusher. And I was really hoping they'd take at least one. When they started trading for all these picks, I thought, man, you really need a defensive end. And getting him, I thought that was a really nice move.
Yeah, this guy, he started off his college career as a wide receiver.
That's crazy, going from wide receiver to defensive end.
And it's funny at first, like, I had seen bits and pieces of him, and I saw that he was listed as a linebacker, an outside linebacker. And I was like, oh, what if this guy could wind up being the will linebacker that we don't really have on this roster? But I looked, and, I think he's like when they say outside linebacker, they look at like Khalil Mack, 3-4. This guy is really an edge rusher. And he's a twitch athlete. I didn't see his RAS score, but I would be shocked if it's not 9 or above. Really good athlete. Really good burst and acceleration when he to get around the corner. Really good body control. He's got a good bend. Can dip around blockers. The speed he has looks good. Smooth redirect skills. When he goes into stunts and twists, he's really quick to get there. He's going to beat a lot of offensive linemen to the punch because of his fluid movement and his speed. Uses his hands really well. He's long. And he could easily add probably 20 pounds to his frame without losing speed. Yeah, I've read that he's really intelligent and a really positive, guy that teammates and coaches love, which is good. You look at, he's going to have to get stronger because, we're going from wide receiver to edge rusher. There's a lot of strength that's going to have to come with that.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. You're facing lineman right there.
Like, his strength comes from, he's a big framed guy that's fast and he gets guys off balance, but he's not going to be able to bull rush an offensive tackle in the NFL. Just not gonna. But there's not a ton of guys that can. He's just gonna have to build up that strength. He's still learning some of the rush moves because he hasn't been an edge rusher that long. The ones he's worked on, very good, but you're still gonna have to work on that. And he's gonna have to learn to be a better edge setter for the run plays. But I think that's, those are things that he's going to have to learn through this coaching staff. I like him a lot. And I saw a lot of draft experts had him ranked very high. Dane Brugler from The Athletic, who's like their their draft guy, had him as the 78th best pick in the draft, and the Bears got him at 174. And he's another guy that I don't know if he will be ready this coming year to be a strong contributor, because again, diamond in the rough, but a year or two down the road, people are going, where the hell did this guy come from? So
yeah, I think that's a fair take.
I like him a lot. Yeah, you're going to see good things from Dominique Robinson. The next pick, 186, which was the pick that they had, they took Zach Thomas, offensive tackle from San Diego State. He's a guy who doesn't look big enough. He's going to have to put on size. I mean, he's definitely a big guy, but his frame is so big that you're going to have to put on more weight to fill him out. He's probably going to be a guy that you kick into guard. I don't think he can play at the next level at tackle. Keeps a good pad level. He's really athletic. He's a guy that's going to have to get stronger. Hand placement's got to work on that. Got to work on that core strength, definitely. And plays a little bit where he lets the guy into his body, where he's going to have to work on his hands some more. But he doesn't really commit penalties. He had 3 penalties total his senior year, 2 false starts and a holding. But he was a 4-year starter at San Diego State, was their left tackle. Very athletic guy. He's a guy that you kick him into guard and he's going to be able to pull like crazy because he's nimble and he's an athletic guy. This is a project pick. He's probably going to be a practice squad guy. But again, the Bears took 4 bites at the apple to fill an offensive line spot. And, Zach Thomas is a guy that they look at where Ryan Poles said, we want to get lighter and more athletic.
You're going to go the Garpax there.
I almost went Garpax, but the Ryan Poles, the lighter and more athletic on the offensive line. This guy fits that mold. Very athletic, light. San Diego State, low level competition. It's going to take a while for him to improve, but there's definitely traits there that fit what they're trying to do. And then one of the picks that they got for trading down is number 203 in the 6th round. They took Tristan Ebner, the running back out of Baylor. He's a really compact ball carrier with good speed, not great speed. Nice lateral movements to escape tacklers. He's really instinctive at finding the holes. Got a low center of gravity. So you're going to see him pick up yards after contact. He was a wide receiver in high school. So he's good route runner, good ball, good at catching the ball, got good hands. I didn't see very many, if any, dropped balls. Good special teamer. So he's a good returner. In college, he had over 25 yards per kick return. He's a little small. He's a little stiff at the ankles and the hips, but so you're not going to see him be able to stop start like a Barry Sanders. I mean, there's not that many people that are, but
Yeah.
just you won't see a lot of stop start with him. And his pass blocking is a little suspect. But he's a guy that once you work on pass blocking, he's a 3-down back. You can use him as a weapon in the receiving. You can run him 25 times a game, and he's a kick return guy. So again, we talked about this before. I don't really see him pushing Herbert or Montgomery.
I don't either.
But I could see him pushing Evans for that third running back spot.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Doug's number 207 in round 6, Doug Kramer, the center out of Illinois.
ILL, Illinois boy coming to the Bears.
Yeah. He's from I think he's from Hinsdale. He is a Bears fan. And I don't know if you saw the quote he had, but he said, 2 things I know about the Bears is they have the most Hall of Famers, and I want to add another trophy to that case.
I saw that, and that got Meatball Brain just going.
I know, right? He's got a mean streak to him. He's got really good footwork and technique, really athletic, smart, recognizes, the blitz patterns and the block protections and the pressure points and pre-snap recognition, really good. Smaller. I don't see him. They list him as interior offensive line. I don't see him ever being a guard. I think he's a center, period. But he's he's going to have to get a little stronger. He might have to put on a little more size. He's going to have trouble with power bull rushers. But when I see him, I see Jason Kelce from the Eagles. That's who he reminds me of.
Interesting. All right.
And then 226 in the 7th round, Ja'Tyre Carter, offensive tackle out of Southern. He is a tackle, but I don't know how he's not a guard. He's a really good pass blocker. He's going to have to, he's a maul or two at the run. He's got good technique. But he played in the lower level competition at Southern. Good size, 6'3", 315 pounds. Good feet. But he needs to be able to explode out of his stance. Doesn't do that so well. Gets a little high in his pad level. He's the one that threw me a little bit. I didn't see the athleticism from him. I didn't see what his measurables were, but seeing some play of his, he's going to have to work on his handwork. He's going to be a project, but again, he was very good in college, and this is another bite at the apple. And then the last pick, 254. Oh, I'm sorry, second to last. Elijah Hicks, safety out of Cal. I read, a lot of draft people's take on him, and Dane Brugler had him as, I don't know, it was like 30th, 35th best safety. Some other people that were a little down on him, and he was off my radar. But I went and watched game film of him this morning, and I'm like, what are these people? What am I missing? I like him a lot. I really like him, and I was glad that Greg Gabriel posted this, after, I don't know, maybe an hour or so after I watched film, he posted something along the lines of, I think he's going to be a solid player. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad somebody else sees it. I was starting to feel crazy. I loved what I saw. I think he's going to push for a roster spot. He's a dog out there. I mean, he's out there competing. He's that temperament and like, aggressiveness that Ryan Poles said he wanted. He's got a good size on him, and he plays pretty fast. And the angles he took as safety were great. Ability to play that center field. I didn't see anything negative. I'm looking at what Lance Zierlein had to say, and talked about some technique things and some tardiness out of the zone, not being athletic, and I just don't see it. I watched him and I said, literally after watching 2 games of him, the first thing I said after that was, DeAndre Houston Carson better come correct in training camp, because this guy might take his job.
Oh man.
And that is not a dig on DHC, because I like DHC. I just think Elijah Hicks can play football. All
right. Well, I will hold you to that, because I really don't know much about him, frankly. But
I didn't either. My daughter had a dance recital this morning, and there was a lot of downtime, and I just sat in the lobby watching game film on this guy, and I was like, I like him.
You meatballing out in the lobby of a dance recital. Look at this guy, my friends.
I'm like, who here likes football? All right, I'm going to talk to you anyway.
Look at this guy.
But the last pick the Bears had was Trenton Gill, punter out of NC State.
He needed a punter.
He wasn't the punt god.
No, that made me sad. With all those draft picks accumulating, I'm like, maybe they get him. I was actually getting my hopes
later than I expected him to. But he went to the Bills, punt god. And did you see what he tweeted out?
No, I didn't.
So you know how the Buffalo Bills fans are always like jumping through tables
and puking.
He tweeted out, he was like, "Where can I get a table?"
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my God, if this guy goes out in training camp and jumps through a table, he is going to be right behind Josh Allen as everybody's favorite Buffalo Bill.
I am just going to see him as the punter that got away, but whatever. Hopefully we're not punting too much going forward. You know what I mean?
So our friend Brad Spielberger from Over the Cap had my favorite analysis of Trenton Gill. He put punter. He went through like an analysis of all the draft picks with like as far as metrics, and then he just put Trenton Gill, punter.
Oh, that's all you need to know. He punts the ball.
I wasn't planning to watch any film of a punter, but from what I read, is the guy has got a leg on him. But
I would hope.
I think he has 2, but no, he's got a strong leg, but his ball placement's not really good.
Oh, great.
So he can kick it far, but getting it into, inside the 5 or the 10, not that good at. So is he going to be our punter? I don't know. But they didn't bring in any undrafted rookie punters. So it looks like it is probably going to be between Ryan Winslow and Trenton Gill as who the punter is.
Boy, remember when we had the QB competition literally every year for 100 years? Now we got the punting competition. We went from QB competition to kicking competition, back to QB competition, and now we got the punting competition. Is Goose Island going to have a
forgot
festival?
About tight end-orama.
Oh, that's true. 11 tight ends, whatever it was. And But hey, maybe Goose Island will host a fan punting festival like they did with the kicking competition.
But I'm just going to read through the names of the other people that they're bringing in, the undrafted folks. I did not do any analysis on them, and there's only a couple of guys that I've even seen play. But Allie Green, cornerback out of Mizzou, Jaylon Jones, defensive back out of Ole Miss, Savon Scarver, wide receiver out of Utah State, Jack Sanborn, linebacker out of Wisconsin, Jack Tongus, tight end out of Cal, Cyrus Holder, wide receiver out of Duquesne, Kevin Shaw, wide receiver out of Liberty. They brought in 3 people from Liberty, just an FYI.
Liberty.
Chase Allen, tight end out of Iowa State, Master Teague, running back, Ohio State, played 2 years with Justin Fields, Landon Lenore, wide receiver out of Southern Illinois, CJ Avery, linebacker out of Louisville, Henry Litwin, wide receiver out of Slippery Rock University in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Tristan Taylor, offensive lineman out of Eastern Washington. Jonathan Alexander, safety out of Charlotte. Jalen Alexander, linebacker out of Purdue. Micah Dutredway, defensive lineman out of Minnesota. Cyrus Holder, wide receiver out of Duquesne. Christian Albright, linebacker out of Ball State. Gene DeLance, offensive lineman out of Florida. Luke Little, wide receiver from Mary. Derek Bush, cornerback out of Coastal Carolina. And then these are the tryout guys. Roy Baker, cornerback out of Eastern Kentucky. Elijah James, defensive lineman out of Liberty. John Huntley, tight end out of Liberty. Kanoa Fuava, defensive lineman, Western Michigan. Trey Bugg, who I am rooting so hard for because I want the Bears to have a guy named Trey Bugg.
Please tell me his middle name is Spray. Bug. What's his last name? Spray.
Oh, Uncle Buck is so good. A defensive back out of Air Force. Coney Durr, defensive back out of Minnesota. Drew Pitt, a quarterback out of Ball State. Competition time.
Justin Fields sweating.
Antonio Ortiz, long snapper out of TCU. Ezekiel Barnett, linebacker out of Louisiana Tech. Josh Black, defensive lineman out of Syracuse. Matthew Coughlin, kicker out of Michigan State. Demontre Tuggle, running back out of Ohio. And Jamal Brooks, linebacker out of Southern Alabama.
Where's Jamarius Xeritrix, Hingle McCringleberry, Donkey Teeth, Jagrius Margoon?
Torque Lewis.
Jackhammer noise Lewis.
Lewis.
DeAndre D. Billings Clyde. When he delivered that one, always makes me laugh.
Oh, that skit was so good.
Genius. Absolute genius.
Dan Smith, Penn State.
God, I love Key and Peele.
So honestly, I'm looking at this, and like I said, I was positive. The one thing I knew for certain is coming out of this draft is that we were going to take a shit ton of undrafted rookies and give them an opportunity. And looking at this, there are 34 undrafted rookies that are coming in. Sure, some of them are just going to be camp bodies that are going to not be anywhere near good enough to make this team. But I think they're honestly going to all get a fair shake.
Especially now. I mean, with the position the Bears are in right now, when you're in a rebuilding phase and you're trying to see what you have, now's the time to do it.
And you have a GM who was an undrafted rookie free agent.
Yeah, he knows what it's like.
He knows what it's like. And I think he's going to give them all a fair shake to make this roster. I think a lot of times these guys are brought in and they're like, all right, we're going to pay them, like a $15,000 signing bonus and whatever pay for the couple of months that they're on this team. And then they're going to send them off. But I think these guys, most of them are really going to get a chance to show what they can do. and it's
Ding
up to
Dong
them.
George better not use his purple crayon to sign all these guys. It's gonna, fade down to nothing.
But kind of slotting these guys in and seeing where the holes were, and I still think I would like to see another veteran wide receiver brought in.
Manuel Sanders is available.
He is. I mean, an AJ Green. He's old, but I mean,
isn't Julio Jones still technically available too?
You know what? If you told me Julio Jones would be healthy for 14 out of the 17 games, I would say worth it.
Yeah, what do you got to lose?
But I think AJ Green might be a reasonable option with a 1-year deal. He might want to go to a team that could win. Keelan Cole, possibly a name. Will Fuller, possibly a name. I would guess that they will probably bring in a veteran guard and a veteran defensive lineman. Linval Joseph, Sheldon Richardson, maybe even Larry Ogunjobi on a lesser deal. Guard, like a Quentin Spain or a Trey Turner. And I would expect them probably to bring in a Sam linebacker, a veteran. But I think we're mostly at what this team is going to be. I would guess that they're going to bring a couple more veterans on a 1 or 2 year deal, but
you have to bring in a few more.
Fills
in some of those spots.
I want another guard, and I desperately want another guard. I wouldn't be mad at another defensive lineman. We could probably live without another wide receiver, but I'd
really like one.
Yeah, I would like, I honestly, I think AJ Green would be a good option. He's at the last legs of his career, and I think he's still got enough juice to play a little bit and mentor these younger receivers. And then next year you go get your wide receiver one.
That would be your hope. That would be your hope when you have a first round draft pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, you bring in like a Sheldon Richardson, Anthony Barr, a Trey Turner, and an AJ Green. I think you make this team much more solid.
So I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Quinn wasn't traded. For now, he's still a Bear. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a smart move. Sure, he makes a lot of money, and the deal was kind of back end loaded. But you weren't going to get value like Khalil Mack. You got a second and a sixth, and you got out of a lot of money on that deal.
Right. And then, the dead cap this year as a whole for the Bears is going to be a ton. And that's all left over from the Pace era. But after this year, it's going to be going away. I still think that the Mac move, as not fun as it was still the right move.
Yeah. Robert Quinn, you're not going to get the same deal. Like if you were going to get a second and a sixth for Robert Quinn, I would go, okay, I'm listening. Yeah. But I don't think you were going to get that. And you also need to rush the passer. I don't know where else. I don't know where else you're going to get pass rush. I like Travis Gibson, but I like him opposite somebody, not as the main guy.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
You would have to wow me with a deal. I would not be shopping Robert Quinn. I would be listening to offers, but I would not be shopping him per se.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I mean, there was like on the surface, you say, okay, he's an older guy. He's on the wrong side of 30. His trade value is probably never going to be higher, but I think other GMs understand too that Robert Quinn is on the wrong side of 30. He's making a lot of money, and you're going to have to take a risk by bringing him on because of his age and, he's probably peaked. I mean, he could have another really good season next year. I just don't expect record breaking, a season like he had last year, like Bears record breaking season. But you need an anchor or two for your defense, regardless of the status of next year. And you don't want to sell too short. You don't want to just give him away for like a 4th round pick. You wouldn't want to do that for for what he brought to you last year. So I'm okay with them not trading him. I was perfectly fine with the idea of shopping him and seeing what you can get, but they didn't. So I'm like, okay, Robert Quinn's still a Bear. Fine. I'm not upset. And, let's be real. Even if Robert Quinn still had a much better season on paper and a healthier season than Khalil Mack, Khalil Mack is still worth more because of the type of player he is. But for the Bears going forward, he's on the wrong side of 30. He's coming off a significant injury. He's had nagging injuries the past few years. It was fine to trade him. It was probably better to trade him now than potentially wait another year where his value could potentially dip even further.
Right. And, let's say they offered you a 4th round pick for Robert Quinn. How do you replace him with that 4th round pick? So you have to ask yourself, how do I replace that production? And, am I a better team with this 4th round pick or Robert Quinn? And I think you say, all right, well, we don't need to get rid of him. We're still plenty under the salary cap.
Right.
Let's just keep him, because that 4th round pick, honestly, it changes your draft strategy, because then you go, what, now edge rusher is a definite need of this team. So instead of drafting the corner or the safety that you drafted, you're probably drafting an edge rusher. And then what are you doing at either corner or safety? Probably going to go after safety, and then pushes down what the wide receiver you go after, because then corner's still a bigger need than wide receiver. It just really changes what you're able to do. I would rather have just kept Robert Quinn, and nothing's to say that you can't trade him in the middle of the season. If at middle of the season, you're like, man, we stink, and who cares if we can get to the pass rusher or the quarterback because we stink anyway, trade him at the trade deadline. And then,
sure,
like halfway through the season, if he's got 8-9 sacks, you're going to get a better return at that point than you are at the draft.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quick with the Bears is we released Nick Foles, and I can't say that I'm surprised.
No,
we knew that Nick Foles was not going to be playing for the Bears this coming year.
Yes, it was. He would have. He was either going to be traded yesterday, or he was going to be released today. That was it. And the only difference is if they could have traded him away, they would have gotten $1 million more on their salary cap due to guarantees. But they got rid of him, and he's they obviously couldn't trade him, and so they just cut him. And that's that.
Yeah, and I know he says that he wanted Nick Foles to decide where he wanted to go. And classy move. My feeling is, though, that they just couldn't find a trade partner.
No, there's, we saw teams were a little stingy with some of the trades for players. So I didn't see anybody trading for Nick Foles. I thought last year they had a better shot of trading him, because you're like, okay, some of these top tier quarterbacks, you want a veteran behind them. So a Nick Foles would be perfect. But this year, you really didn't have quarterbacks drafted.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that a lot of teams either have their future franchise quarterback put in place, or they're pretty much content with the bridges they have now. Yeah, could the Seahawks use another quarterback, not Drew Lock? Sure, but I think their plan is to draft a quarterback and just ride with Drew Lock for one more year. Same with the Lions with Jared Goff. So teams are pretty set with their quarterbacks, whether or not they're their short-term or long-term answers. So Nick Foles will get picked up by somebody, but I don't think you're going to have a team like, you know what, we need a quarterback. We're going to sacrifice draft capital for a guy like Nick Foles.
Yeah. I mean, does it make sense for Detroit or Seattle? Probably not.
No.
Last year I thought would have made sense because you had so many quarterbacks drafted in the first round. You're like, those are guys that are probably going to play sooner rather than later. Makes sense to have a veteran behind him, especially as the Jets. But honestly, this year, you had one quarterback drafted through 2.5 rounds. So
yeah,
none of those quarterbacks are going to be starting early. So you don't need a veteran quarterback, and going to Detroit or Seattle, he's not like, you don't want to ride with him to start. So you don't want to spend money in draft capital to have a really good backup quarterback when your job is you're probably going to lose again from tanking for next year.
right.
So I'm not surprised they couldn't find a trade partner. Best of luck to him. Honestly, I would not be shocked if nobody signs him. He just retires.
Maybe.
I
think my bet is someone will pick him up, but would I be completely shocked if that happens? Not necessarily, because I think he could bring a lot of value to a quarterback room, but we'll see.
I mean, maybe the Chiefs bring him in because of his connections with Andy Reid.
Sure.
But then again, Matt Nagy's there. And
that's true. I keep forgetting that.
I don't know if there's any love lost between those two.
Well, maybe it's his opportunity to get back at Matt Nagy. He's like, bitch, you're not my head coach anymore. You're just a front office guy. So I am going to lay the fuck into you.
I think he's the quarterback's coach.
Is he the quarterback's coach?
Yeah.
See, that's how much I've been keeping up with Matt Nagy.
Yeah. Like, remember when you used to be a head coach? That was awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I just, like I said, you reminded me he was with the Chiefs organization, and I know Ryan Pace is with the Falcons. That I do know. So
our last 2 GMs are with the Falcons.
Phil Emery is doing something in the NFL?
Yes.
Huh. Didn't they also sign Andy Dalton?
I thought Andy Dalton was still a free agent.
I thought Andy Dalton signed with, let's see. Google will tell me. I swear he signed somewhere.
Yeah. Phil Emery is in the front office for the Atlanta Falcons. So can you imagine the conversations he's having with Ryan Pace?
Oh, it's the New Orleans Saints he signed with. Never mind. Close enough. Same division.
Huh. I didn't even know that.
But yeah, I knew he signed somewhere down there. But anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. Can you imagine the conversations that Phil Emery and Ryan Pace are having? Hey, remember when we both screwed up the Bears?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. I remember handling the cap space.
Oh, he signed with the Saints. Was it yesterday?
No, this was a while ago.
Oh.
Yeah, he signed a while ago. I knew he signed somewhere. Just is their veteran backup.
Good for him.
Yeah, kind of had that feeling he'd signed somewhere.
They probably paid him a lot less than $10 million a year.
I would imagine so.
But yeah, so I'm excited to see how this works out. I mean, there's a lot of picks, a lot of players brought in. A lot of them are not ready for prime time. So there's this team is, I will say, this team is better today than it was on Thursday.
Yeah, there's little question about that.
So I like the path that they're on. They said, you know what, this is kind of a lost year. We're going to clean up all the cap mess that Ryan Pace put us in, get us in a good spot for next year, and start building the framework of our team. And Rome was not built in a day. They're building this from the ground up. And this year will be about, the offense will be better by a new scheme and quarterback going from year 1 to year 2, more so than just surrounding him with a shit ton of weapons. But I do hope that they add at least one more weapon for Ryan or for Justin Fields.
I agree.
But we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
Just really quickly, one last thing I want to say with the Bears was I ran a quick Twitter poll, only ran it for like an hour. And I said, how do you feel about the draft? 55.3% said solid, 21.1% said great, 18.4% said meh, and 5.3% said bad. That's among 38 votes. So I think if you look at that sample size overall, people seem to at least feel decently about where this is going. So just something I thought was good to look at.
I think it was a good draft. I don't think it was a great draft because I look at and the reason I can't even give it a great is because they were trying to fill so many spots and they didn't have as much draft capital as they would in normal years. But if I want to say a great draft, I look at the Baltimore Ravens and I look at their draft and I go, oh man, that's a game changer there.
Well, the thing with the Bears too is that it's hard to evaluate some of these guys because they're so raw, because so many of these guys were taken in the later rounds. So it's really going to have to time itself out to kind of see what results we get.
I mean, if I said that you had to walk out of this draft with 3 solid contributors, and I think they did. I think Gordon winds up being the starting cornerback opposite Jalen Johnson. I think Brisker is the starting safety opposite of Eddie Jackson. And I think Velus Jones he won't be the starting wide receiver, but I think he will get significant playing time and there will be dedicated packages for him and he will be a kick returner. So I think you'll see Khalil Herbert as the punt returner and maybe Daz Newsome, and you'll see Velus Jones as the kick returner. So I think you got 3 solid contributors in this draft. And I am going to guess in a few, that's talking about this year. And I think going forward in a couple of years, you can probably say you will have, I'm saying one of those offensive linemen will pan out. Robinson will probably pan out and Hicks, I think, will pan out. Maybe the punter pans out. So I think you will probably have 3, 4, 5, 6 guys pan out in a draft. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Especially considering you didn't have a first rounder. The Jets had, I think, 4 picks before you had 1.
Yeah,
So, I think for the constraints that you had, you did pretty good.
I'd say so too.
We should probably wrap this up with some baseball.
Oh, goody.
Baseball in Chicago this week has been Buffalo Bill fan puke.
Yeah, to say the least. It's been pretty ugly. I mean, at least the Cubs salvaged a win on Sunday on my birthday. Marcus Stroman looked fantastic, but everything else about that series against Milwaukee, 11-1 loss and a 9-1 loss, just flat ugly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Suzuki has had a rough week. Um, you've seen some lows from him, multi-strikeout games, a couple of offers, and we knew that was coming, but still sucks to see. Uh, you see, games where they're not hitting the baseball at all. Um, yeah. Uh, you see Kyle Hendricks look like doo-doo.
Yeah,
Um,
it's back and forth with them. Good game, bad game, good game, bad game. And honestly, I think that's the Kyle Hendricks you're going to get from now on. It's not that he can't be efficient anymore. I just think that consistency's gone. And you don't like to declare that this early in the season, but it's a continuing trend from last year,
yeah, it's not new.
especially against the Brewers. The Brewers have pounded him in recent, except for opening day. Opening day, he looked great against them, but some of the Brewers starts for him going back to last year have been no bueno.
Um, Nick Madrigal looks like dog doo-doo.
I think a stint in AAA would do him some good. I just don't think he's right. He's striking out. He's not supposed to strike out. This is a guy that had a serious injury last year, only had a handful of games under his belt in the major leagues, and then there was a weird offseason. I just, I don't think he's quite right. It's looked really ugly. Send him to Iowa for a few weeks. I think that wouldn't do much harm. I think that could allow him to maybe get some of his timing back and maybe just whatever's wrong, because something just looks off.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday he was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Sunday 1 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. That's not the guy that we saw with the White Sox.
No.
Justin Steele doesn't look very good.
He's got the stuff, but the command's just not there. I think he's a reliever.
I think you might be right.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just eventually you want a starter, but Jordan Wicks and Caleb Killian are working on it in the minors. So hopefully at some point you see one of those guys come up. I think Caleb Killian is obviously closer to the majors than Jordan Wicks, but you're hoping that Jordan Wicks can be ready within the next year or so.
If you were to move Justin Steele to a reliever spot or a long reliever spot, would you consider stretching out Keegan Thompson?
Yes.
Keegan Thompson looks real good.
Fantastic.
The guy gives up a run and then his one run and his ERA goes up.
Yep, from 0 to like 1 point whatever.
I think he's still below 1 as ERA. If not, it's pretty close. Like he's been phenomenal this year.
Yeah, you cannot complain one bit about him. He has been awesome. And I think that's one of those guys where you say, he wasn't really that well advertised coming up, but you found something.
And who cares how they were, looked in the minors? It's what they look like in the majors. That's all we care about.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're in the minors too, a lot of times you're just tinkering with stuff. So the numbers aren't always going to look as good in the minors.
And Rivas, what does the guy got to do to get consistent playing time?
I think we're reaching the point where you got to say, you know what, first base, that's Rivas's position. If you want to play Frank Schwindel, DH him. But I think that Rivas needs to be playing every day, and Frank Schwindel should be in that spot where he's not necessarily playing every day. It was a fun story last year, but he's really come down to earth.
He really has, and it's a bummer.
It is, but can I say it's overly surprising? No, he's worked his tail off. I appreciate what the hell that he's done, but yeah, he's just really coming down to earth. Though I gotta say, Patrick Wisdom's holding his own for what he does. He's at least making the most of it. He can hit home runs. He's been hitting home runs. He can field. He's been fielding. He could play solid defense. He's not an extraordinary ball player, but the things that he does do well, he is still delivering upon in the majors. I will give him credit that he's holding his own.
I would like to see him get a little uptick in his batting average and his on base percentage, but
no, I don't really think you're going to see that.
But yeah, I mean, he's in the ballpark of the expectation.
I mean, when you have a placeholder, that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, and I think it would be a tougher if he was younger. Going, will he get better? You can't teach this kind of power. If we can get him to cut down on the strikeouts and make some more contact, batting average goes up. And we can live with him. But was he 30?
Yeah, 30.
I think it makes it easier that he is a placeholder. But again, I wouldn't have done anything different in the offseason. You go in and you're like, you know what? I'm going to ride or die with Patrick Wisdom.
No, I would have taken another big free agent, but that's just me.
I would have taken it, but realistically, biblical losses, blah, blah, blah.
Pumpkins at Gallagher way.
Yeah, you weren't going to bring back Chris Bryant. So, if you're not going to get a legit long-term answer at third base, like what short-term answer are you going to get that, that's, I would rather just ride or die with Patrick Wisdom. And I said the same thing about Frank Schwindel. All right, if we're not going to get a legitimate guy to come in here and take the position, I'd rather just see what Schwindel can do. And he's sort of floundering in that spot. And
it's Alfonso Rivas time.
I think that's the answer. I mean, you sort of have to.
And there's just one more thing I want to say about first base. And I want to make this very clear that I'm not trying to sound bitter, salty, or mad at the guy, because I far from dislike him because he's a Cubs hero. But a lot of people are pointing to Anthony Rizzo and how well he's doing with the Yankees. Rizzo
he hit like a 135-foot home run.
Doesn't have that porch here at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, there's a reason that he was a perfect. Everyone went, oh yeah, New York Yankees, because
fits like a glove there.
Fits like a glove is you get a fly ball as a pull left-handed hitter, and it's a home run. That is a short porch there. That makes total sense. And the guy, if you were to translate all of his home runs and superimpose them into other stadiums, those are not home runs. He probably has 4, but a lot of those are not home runs. So
especially with the wind blowing in and the bad weather.
Yeah. You include the wind of in San Francisco or Chicago. Yeah, they probably a lot more get knocked down. But and you're right. I am not shitting on Anthony Rizzo, and I'm not having sour grapes. And I hope he hits 83 home runs. 83. But I'm also going to be realistic that he's aided by the perfect place to be.
Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with saying that what was best for him was playing in New York, and that he wasn't going to be doing exactly the same thing here with the Cubs.
He would not be doing the same thing with the Cubs, especially in April, with the cold weather and the wind blowing in.
The lineup you're around when you're around Judge and Stanton.
Yeah, you're not going to get good pitches, and a lot of those high balls are going to get blown right back in. I mean, we saw what was that one by Wisdom that was the hardest hit ball ever that wasn't a home run.
Yeah.
It got blown back 19 feet. You're like, so uh, it just different scenario. So I'm happy for the guy. He's a really great guy, and he was a great run with the Cubs. But just because he's putting up these numbers does not mean that we made the wrong call by not re-signing him.
I mean, would I have taken him back? Absolutely. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying not to harp on it. That's all.
Yeah, I'm going to be realistic about it.
Yeah. Yep.
And based on his age and where he is at his career, and the numbers he would have probably put up with the Cubs at Wrigley Field, I would much rather be fingers crossed and optimistic about Rivas.
It's his time. It's time to see what this young guy can do. And so far, he's done nothing but impress.
Right. The other side of town, man, the White Sox are not good either.
There is a lot of struggles going on with the White Sox. I mean, you're not getting the offense that you've wanted. And I understand people are hurt, but you've been averaging 2 runs a game the past 2 weeks. That's not going to get it done.
I mean, Luis Robert is batting .211 with a .628 OPS.
Yeah. And I know there's been a bit of bad luck with Robert. I'm sure he'll come around just fine, but right now the numbers don't look sexy. I mean, what were those numbers you wanted to read? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, this is not an indictment on any player, and this is not hey, this is what they're going to look like all season. But the reason the White Sox are losing is everybody's in a slump right now. And this team, it's like, remember when we talked about the Cubs, everybody statistically having the worst year of their career at the same year.
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to have that with the White Sox. You're like, how does this anomaly happen? Yasmani Grandal is batting .161 with a .496 OPS. Jose Abreu is batting .219 with a .655 OPS.
He is a notorious slow starter, so I'm not too worried about him.
And Harrison, who everyone was excited about bringing in, is batting .171 with a .520 OPS. So
he's batting .171. I'm honestly surprised it's that high.
And Lurie Garcia is batting .118.
Ugh.
And that was after he raised his batting average by hitting a home run today.
Yeah, well, you look at the 2 guys that have been hitting are Anderson and Vaughn. Vaughn looks fantastic. I mean, that guy I think is going to be a superstar. He is such a good hitter, but you can't just rely on 2 guys.
No,
because Money Grandal needs to step the hell up. That's one of my big opinions.
Yeah, he is your big money guy, and his OPS is under 500. Not good enough.
No,
not good enough.
No.
And, I just named those guys, but I mean, Eloy is hurt and he's going to be out for a significant amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And other guys just really aren't playing. You've got Tim Anderson, who is the engine that makes this offense go.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Vaughn is playing really well, but other than that is nobody else is hitting. And the pitching has not been exceptional.
Dallas Keuchel needs to go.
Dallas Keuchel looks like the last Cubs year of John Lester, where he is just getting outs by he's MacGyvering outs.
MacGyver.
You're like, how? I mean, he is brutal out there. Kopech looked bad this week.
At least he's been good overall.
I mean, listen, he didn't give up a ton of runs. He gave up 2 runs in 5 innings, but his command was not there.
It was a little bit of a struggle.
Aaron Bummer looks like he's pitching scared. Keuchel, Tuesday he pitched and it was not the worst start. But he had 5 walks in 4 innings.
That's not going to do it.
Yeah, and they lost 6-0. So, I mean, was it the worst start he had? No, but it was not nearly good enough, especially when your 1 through 4 hitters combined for 2 of 13 with 0 runs, 0 RBIs, and 4 strikeouts. Cease did look good.
Cease looks great. Like Cease legitimately looks like a Cy Young caliber pitcher.
Giolito gave up a lot of hits on Friday versus the Angels. Vince Velasquez actually didn't look bad.
The most surprising start was Vince Velasquez. Actually looked really damn good in his start, and they won that game 4-0. That was a really well played game by them. But you looked at what Giolito did the night before, and you're like, well, it's not very good. But Giolito's looked really good overall, so I'm not too worried about that. The Angels are hot right now. Mike Trout. He's unbelievable.
He's great.
He's still the best player in the sport.
But Keuchel didn't look good against today, and the guy's record is 1-3. You've got a problem there.
Yeah, and Liam Hendricks too. I think he's been pitching hurt this whole time. That was pretty evident with the loss last week against the Twins. He's clearly not healthy. He's got issues with the back, I believe. So you want to make sure he gets healthy, but you need Lance Lynn back. You need him back more than ever.
Yeah, you need him pretty bad.
And the offense is going to come around. Their BABIP is like lowest in baseball, and it's not like they're hitting everything soft. I think it's going to even out a bit. They've hit into some tough luck. Luis Roberts going to come around. Jose Abreu will come around. I'm very confident that this team, once the weather gets warmer and some of that luck evens out, they're going to be scoring a ton of runs again. I'm really not worried about that. But, there are some guys you look at, like I said, Yasmani Grandal needs to step the hell up. You need a bit more production from the second base position. You're going to want AJ Pollock to start hitting again because he got off to a really good start. That first series in Detroit, he looked great. And then ever since then, he hasn't been hitting as much. So you want to get him going again.
I think you start to get better production at second base, you start by sitting Lurie the fuck down.
Nah, Tony La Russa will never go for that.
It's so wild. Like, you're like, why? Why do you keep putting this guy in? And he's been terrible this year. Like,
Lurie Garcia has nude photos of Tony La Russa somewhere. I don't know.
I don't know. It's unbelievable because you look and you're not like, all right, well, is he fielding well? And you sort of even out your WAR with your defensive ability. Nope. He's been a shitty fielder this year too. And been a bad base runner when he's gotten on a base and been a bad fielder and an awful hitter. You're like, this guy, I haven't looked, but his WAR has got to be at this point already probably over a -1 or close to it.
It's probably not very good. I mean, when not a lot is happening in a good way, it's not going to be very good. Because last year, very solid hitter, solid field. He did everything fine. He was never outstanding, but he was far from bad last year.
No, he was he was the super sub.
Right, he was. And it's just frustrating that the White Sox said, you know what, we're going to sign him to a 3-year extension to be our guy. He's going to be our guy that's going to be in there all the time. And we're also going to help bring in some reinforcements by a washed up Josh Harrison.
All right. What do you think would be a good WRC plus for this point in the season?
As a team?
No, as a player.
As a player. Okay, so they're going to be a bit inflated because of small sample size, obviously, but I would say let's go with 120. That would be pretty dang good.
Would you like to know what Lurie Garcia's WRC plus is right now?
Do I? All right, what is it?
-4.
Holy crap.
His WAR is a -0.6.
Ugh. But bat him third. Remember when Tony La Russa batted him third?
He's got almost 25% K rate, a 4% walk rate. His walk to strikeout ratio is 0.17. His on base percentage is 143. His OPS is 334. His OPS is less than Mike Trout's batting average.
Oi.
BABIP 118. Yeah, his WRC plus last year was 98. Right now it's -4.
Yeah, 98 isn't great, but it's not awful. It's fine, I guess.
It's like average.
Yeah, it's about average. I mean, you want to be around 100 to be average, and 98
but
is
it's
right there.
Yeah,
so.
it's right there. I mean, and you round it up, but -4.
That is Bills fan puke right there.
That really is. So it's just, I understand things will turn around with the Sox, but everybody has just hit a major slump all at the same time. And you don't have a manager that can pull you out of this.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part. I think much better days are ahead for the White Sox. And frankly, I'm still not worried about them winning the division. Look at the Twins are playing well right now. Can't take that away from them. But look at everybody else. Tigers, no. Cleveland, hell no. The Royals, no.
The White Sox could have had AJ Hinch right now. And
they could have.
Instead, they are riding with Tony La Russa, and it still boggles my mind. And there's some people out there that are just going to be like, listen, is he great? No, but he still knows baseball better than most of us. And the manager doesn't impact the outcome that much. And I'm just going to say is that at every opportunity he has the opportunity to look stupid, he has. And AJ Hinch is a winner now, not a winner when, before a lot of us were born. Like this.
Well, it's frustrating that you let him go to a rival, a division rival.
Yeah. Is Tony La Russa was not going to manage anybody else.
No, he was 10 years retired.
Yeah, you drug him.
They didn't even talk to AJ Hinch.
Like you go and you resurrect his corpse and you dust it off and you weekend at Bernie's him with a White Sox uniform. Like, hey, Tony La Russa. And then it's, you've got two guys on either side, and they're like, glug, glug, glug. I'm Tony La Russa.
It's like Kevin Malone trying to make up a story about a family member impacted by something bad, and he started doing the Weekend at Bernie's, and Michael's like, that's Weekend at Bernie's. And I was at my Uncle Bernie's for the weekend. But you know what? They're playing the Cubs at Wrigley, and they always kick our ass at Wrigley, at least the past few years. So, Sox, you got a great chance to work out of this slump.
I have, the last place on earth I want to be is at the Crosstown Classic at Wrigley when it's like 40 degrees.
Yeah, I second that.
Like it's tough enough when it's July and the weather's nice and you're like, man, I just don't want to deal with the nonsense. But you add in that it's going to be 40 degrees and everyone's going to be extra drunk trying to stay warm. And neither
team is doing any good right now.
No. And you're going to watch literally no matter who's playing second, it's going to be the worst matchup of second baseman in history.
Nick Madrigal versus Lurie Garcia. We are going to pay good money to see that.
They're going to combine 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts and 2 errors.
Yeah.
But I see the path for the White Sox to be better though.
Me too.
It starts with getting healthy,
Mhm.
and then it comes back with, if this was hockey, you call it puck luck, but
Yep.
the ball, hitting the ball and it just kind of falling to the right spot. Those numbers are going to even out. And so I just, the White Sox have a path to getting back to being better. The Cubs don't. Better than they are, yes, but to be good, no. We're getting our asses kicked by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
We're getting our asses kicked by the Brewers. Unless we just go on like a 30-game stretch against the Reds, we're in trouble.
Our expectations are pretty low. That's the big difference here.
They were low, but I think everybody was like, oh yeah, we'll definitely be better than the Pirates and the Reds, right?
Well, everyone's better than the Reds, at least.
Yeah, but we're not better than the Pirates.
Give the Pirates time. Give the Pirates time.
They've kicked our asses consistently.
I know.
And that's the frustrating part. It's like, okay, I know we're not good, but I was like, okay, we'll be middle of the pack in this division. But that's not how it's worked.
Well, we are in third place right now. That's the thing is the Pirates have kicked our asses, but they haven't done anything against anyone else, which makes it more frustrating.
That really is frustrating.
Yeah, no, they haven't done jack squat, but against the Cubs, you got Roberto Perez and, some guy named Satsugo hitting home runs, and you have freaking Kevin Newman and Ben Gamel looking like Ted Williams against us.
To be fair, we are tied with the Pirates, and they have the tiebreaker against us. So,
well, you just had to crap on that, didn't you? You had to.
I was just looking there.
But my whole point was the White Sox are still light years better than the Cubs, even with their struggles. So I think the Sox can turn it around against the Cubs, even in a 2-game set. You can see my Cubs fandom is not very high right now. There are things I like watching, whether it's Seiya or Ian Happ, who's really been good, watching David Robertson be awesome, or seeing Marcus Stroman get better and better. But this is just not a good team right now. It's just flat not. They don't have the talent the White Sox do. Once they get healthier, things will be better. But the White Sox need to start taking walks. There is no question about that.
So have you seen the standings of the NL West?
No, I haven't, but I know the Rockies are playing very, very well so far.
The Dodgers are 14-7, Padres are 15-8, the Giants are 14-8, and the Rockies are 13-9. You have 4 out of your 5 teams are really good.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And Diamondbacks aren't terrible. Like, they would be 3rd in the Central, and they'd be 4th in the East, but they're 10-13. They're not terrible. Man, how are the Yankees in first place?
They got a lot of firepower.
I hate the stupid Yankees. Come on, Blue Jays.
I'm rooting for the Blue Jays, man. I like the Blue Jays.
I do.
The Rays haven't looked all that good so far this year.
They have a winning record because they kicked the shit out of the Cubs.
Well,
And the Tigers are terrible. And the Rangers are terrible.
as expected.
And the Orioles are terrible again.
What else is new? Could you imagine being a fan of them?
Wait, hold on. But coming up the rear, I knew the Reds were bad. I'm just really looking. They're 3-19.
Yeah. And you know what's going to be even better? When they come to Wrigley Field in a week or so and they win that series against us.
How embarrassing would that be if they
know it's coming.
If they doubled their win count against the Cubs in one series?
Know that's coming. They're going to look like world beaters against us. I am telling you right now.
Kyle Hendricks is going to give up 7 earned runs and 4 innings of work.
Yeah. Yep. And then we're not going to be able to get any of those hitters out. You're going to have schlubs hitting home runs into the basket. You're going to have them making diving catches. The Reds today had an at-bat. They were on the field. They were pitching. A guy hit 3 straight pop-ups, 2 foul, 1 in play. All within the field of play, though one was just over the reach of the dugout. The catch wasn't made by one player. The third pop-up was right between home plate and the mound, and it just dropped with 3 guys in the vicinity. And you darn well know that when they play the Cubs, they're going to be making gold glove plays out there. Guys you never heard of are going to be hitting line drive home runs. Kyle Hendricks is going to be giving up moonshots to whatever's left of that lineup.
They're going to be like, this guy has a 320 OPS, hasn't hit a home run in 6 seasons, and then he's going to light up Hendricks for a 400-foot home run.
Yep. So let me give you a preview of the audio. And now here's Shlomo on the Reds, really struggling, hasn't had a hit in over a week. He's batting .096. Yeah, Boog, he doesn't have much power. He's trying to figure things out. And here's the pitch. There's a deep drive to right field. This is way back, and this is gone. That's the kind of shit you're going to hear when they play the Reds. Oh, and here's what else. And here's Shlo Show here on the mound. He's had his struggles. He's got about a 9.1 ERA. Doesn't strike out a lot of batters, and he doesn't really get a lot of soft contact. 6 innings later, swing and a miss, strike 3, and he records his 10th strikeout as he continues to roll. 2 hits, no walks, no runs. That's what you're going to see.
You really nailed it. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen.
I've watched this team too many times throughout my life.
This is the baseball version of Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown. We're like, we're going to go in and be like, oh, we're totally going to kick this team's ass. They're 3-19. They're 1-9 in their last 10. And just be like, how does this guy with a 9 ERA throwing 8 shutout innings, and he's getting he's being heralded as a champion, and you're like, how this guy sucks. Like, he hasn't given up like any less than 6 runs in any start in his career, and he's other than 1 walk and 2 hits, he's gonna have a perfect game here.
Yeah, Pat, he uses that 89 mile an hour fastball. He typically tries to locate it, but the Cubs are going to want to take advantage if he gets that fastball up. But today he's just putting it on the corner and has him completely off balance. All strikeouts are sponsored by 4 Seasons. All the right reasons, 4 Seasons. Here's the pitch to Votto. Drilled in the air, deep right field. This is trouble. This is gone.
These strikeouts are sponsored by Preparation H because they're all a pain in the ass. But Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I said my piece. I think on our next show, what we need to do on our next show is we got to kind of eulogize the Bulls and the Blackhawks because their seasons are both over and there's a lot to be done.
Yeah. And I just quickly, I don't know if you saw Jonathan Taves comment about it. I think we can turn this around quick. We just got to put the guys in the right spots and everybody just got to come out and play hard and we'll turn this around quick.
Pats on the back. You keep saying that, Johnny. Just keep saying that.
Grandpa Johnny needs his medicine.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like you're like, here you go, Grandpa. Here's your butterscotch pudding snack. Now go sit in the corner and watch Matlock.
Right on.
Oh, but that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or Alex at ShyFanPat2, Alexander jpatcreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys all so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.